Okay, guys, we'll finish up here with a look at TOTAL2. Or as I mentioned in my note, you guys were looking at some other alts, but everything you guys suggested looks exactly the same. As so many of the alts are going to be a mirror of this. So I have mixed emotions about this, or I should say mixed thinking, or I'm just unsure of it, as to how valuable this is going to be as a predictor for next alt season, assuming we ever get one. Because my view is that when we get 2,000 alts, my view is that out of those 2,000, the vast majority are not going to be around 2-3 years from now. And that would be my guesstimate on it. The strong projects will survive, not unlike the internet bubble. I think there will be, and there will be evolutionary, there'll be forks, there'll be other projects, there'll be things we haven't even thought of 2-3 years down the road as crypto continues to mature and develop. But there, for the time being, it's not particularly bullish for alts. So here I'm on a daily. Let's go down to an 8-hour here. We can get a clear count. Now, what happens here when we go to, because of this, the way they do this index here, when we go to an intraday, we get these gaps. But so I'm working off of the low. So if you come back to the daily here, right, it's this low. All right, so working off of this, we get this clear. Now, we've looked at this several times here. It looks very much like Ethereum, where you have this, it really looks like you want a 3 there, but it doesn't quite work. But I do think you have to dig the 1, 2 out of it to get the 3, 4. But this is a tell that you're, at least in Elliott terms, that you've got a contender here for the 4, as in it doesn't overlap the 1. So if we take the length of the 2, or pardon me, from the 2 low to the 3 high, we come down, we go right to the 50. It front runs by a couple of ticks, just enough so as to not overlap the 1, and up we go. So I think the count up is reasonable, right? To lay that as an impulse on the way up here. Now coming down, this gets a little trickier here. So you got to make a decision here, because essentially we have 3 waves here. So or 3 pivots, I should say. We've got a 1, 2, 3, right? And then we get a retrace. So either, you're trying to dig a 1, 2 out of this so you can stay with an impulse here, but I actually think we've got to go 1, 2, 1, 2. The 3 in that 2 is very clear. So that gives us the subdivision here that would give us the 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 3 at the larger degree. So it's 1, 2, 3. This looks like a pretty solid 4, and it's technical, and we get a little past the, kind of in between the 23 and the 38, right where you're looking for it here. So Vegas wave, we get through it for some wicks, and then down we come. Now, we've yet to get to an algo target here, but I don't know that that's necessarily in play here. So if we make the assumption that the 1 projected from the 4, we're kind of left in between. I don't like pivots where I can't find anything technical from it. Possibly we've got it right here. Yeah, that could be it. Let's see from the 4. There it is. All right, so here we're coming right to golden zone, and we get through wicks here, but just enough to get clearance. So we get a reaction. So my guess is that's what's happening here. Now we just go again. All right, so this is going to be too far to get here, so I stay with that pivot. Now could be a front run on the golden zone, but right now that looks like the path of least resistance. Now we've already broken this low. Now we've had a little pushback. But per the count, right, if we try and get an Elliott count on this that might be a contender here, what do you do, right? You've had a completed impulse here, and we're still going lower, but we don't have the retrace that we'd like that help us lean into the idea that we might, if something completed here, this would be a very shallow B wave, right? If this is A, B, and we're going to continue to go down. So this, not unlike Bitcoin, I think what we may have happening here, right? Way too soon to really lean into this, but I think this may be moving in that direction here, where we'd have some sort of an expanded B wave here heading towards the C. Now, it's very early to make that call, right? But just in terms of laying out a path here that would make sense with this completing, I would be very uncomfortable putting the B here. It's so shallow. Does it happen? Yeah, of course. But I wouldn't want to put money on that's my B, right? So I'd be looking for something higher here and just staying consistent with what we know, how the market moves. I'd be looking for something, a deeper retrace here. And we can kind of Some of that structure here might come into play. Support, resistance. A lot has to happen here in the alt space for us to even approach that 50 here. So it's not an easy count here to get clear on, because certainly this looks like a 3. So I guess to complete this, we'd have to go A, B. We'd be looking for the C up here, and take that down. Go to blue here. So loosely putting the B there, I sure would like to see some progress up on here. I'd feel a lot more comfortable about kind of forecasting this with only just this little V bottom here to work with. It's early. It's like forecasting a triangle when you've got the AB. I never understand why people do that. But here we go. So potentially now, so it's going to be pretty steep here, even if we go to original recipe. Right, maybe you get something along those lines. Looking for structure and some geometry to help guide you into that, right? So obviously this pivot has to hold, but that's not unreasonable. I say actually very similar to what I think is going to happen in Bitcoin in terms of an Elliott count. But same idea, right? It's very, very early to make that prediction. So this is a little bit of a hurry up and wait and see, are we going to get any sort of retrace, or is this just going to be a short-lived little pause here before we just continue down? Then this is going to get, it's going to be a challenge to get a count here that's going to work, that would be reasonable without some sort of a very unusual shape or a force fit. So this just needs more time, but it doesn't look particularly bullish. I mean, okay, so you can make a case here that for a double bottom, right? They're not tick to tick, but we can make a case for that, right? Deeply oversold, like so many of the alts. Does that guarantee, well, if they're oversold, let's get them overbought? No, of course not. So other than leaning into a double bottom or leaning into, well, this would be the accumulation zone down here, which there's some merit to that, right? Again, this might be, if you have particularly favorite alt projects that you look to accumulate here on weakness. We certainly have weakness in the alt space. So the idea that you might do some accumulation down here, nothing wrong with that, right? That shouldn't be necessarily trading capital. I'm going to reference what we just talked about in Bitcoin, but perhaps some of your long term, where you're not really trying to pick the bottom or pick a top. You're just accumulating as it. Perhaps as we go through distribution here, we get some accumulation. Perhaps this is just teed up to if we ever get an alt season, all right, which I think is a question mark. I think there's a legitimate question mark. Alts are going to go. There are going to be some alts that go. I don't know if they go collectively. It remains to be seen. We shall see. All right, so there you go. Again, there's nothing to, what are you going to trade? There's nothing. There's not many alts that really have anything technically that would be particularly attractive to a bull. So I think there's a lot of hurry up and wait in the alt space for this weakness to subside, and if there are retracements, likely they're setting up more shorts, right? Until we get confirmation of a trend change. Certainly in the alt space, path of least resistance continues to be lower. All right, guys, I don't know if there's much else I can add there, but a little fuel for thought. Okay, guys, talk to you later.